Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Sarah Sweeney on the podcast. She's an IFBB figure Olympian, an NASM certified personal trainer, a nutritionist, a Navy wife, but also she's a mom. I know that you can't believe that just by taking one look at her that she's a mom, but she is, everyone. Most importantly, she's our current guest. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what caused you or motivated you, I should say, to adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
I was a student athlete all through middle school, high school, all the way up through college, staying pretty active and tried my hand at lots of different sports. Volleyball, I actually wrestled for a couple of years in high school, strangely enough, with the boys. And then, shortly after high school, actually about 2 weeks after I graduated, I was in a pretty bad car accident, one that I probably should not have walked away from, but thankfully I did. I was T-boned. I was driving just a little sedan and I was T-boned in the driver's side door by an F-350 plowing down the road. Car rolled a couple times and I ended up, at the time it was considered a minor break in my neck, but probably should have paid a little closer attention to it. But I was 18 and ready to go to college and get life going for that. So, spent most of college kind of dealing with just, headaches here and there and weird nerve pain and just kind of chalking it up to either I did something goofy at the gym or, just general headachiness. And then shortly after my husband and I got married, right after we graduated from college, woke up one morning after dealing with a lot of pain in my shoulders, specifically my left shoulder, ended up not being able to move the entire left side of my body, and emergency room visits and orthopedic surgeon visits needed to end up having a pretty major spinal fusion to basically save my mobility. It was one of those things where you either have the surgery and hopefully we fix it, or you don't have the surgery and you possibly become paraplegic or wheelchair bound. And so ended up having the spinal surgery and thankfully it was a success. But I spent the next year kind of sitting on the couch after doing my little rehab stint with the physical therapist, feeling sorry for myself that I was not the able-bodied person that I had been before. And honestly, just really taking that way too personally and doing a lot of things that I encourage a lot of my clients not to do. Now I was an emotional eater and just continued spiraling down until I had put on about 50 pounds. I got upwards to 200 pounds. And after close to a year of watching me just kind of self-pity and feel sorry for myself, my husband finally pushed a number in front of me and said, "Hey, why don't you call this trainer that I know?" And it happened to be Sherry Smith, who is she's an IFBB professional bodybuilder. She's won many, many shows, and she's actually been an Olympian herself. But my husband knew her through police and fire department. She's also an Oklahoma City firefighter and has been for many, many years. And, so I made the phone call, got up the nerve, sat down, chatted with her, got to the point where, okay, I feel comfortable. I'm not going to get hurt, and spent first couple of months at this little rinky dinky gym on the south side, or not south side, sorry, north side of Oklahoma City, basically crying during every training session because I was, barely able to control 5-pound dumbbells and not even remotely close to where I wanted to be, let alone where I had been before. And we spent a good close to 6 months really going through what I would call the rehab phase and making sure that I was physically capable of what I wanted to be doing and, losing some of the weight that I had been carrying around both emotionally and physically. And so that's what really got me started, was honestly a really caring trainer who took an investment in me as a person. So,
That,
yeah.
that's awesome. And for everyone wondering, because I know she said that she's a volleyball player, she's 5'10", so we love having tall guests on the show because it really gives a different perspective because the majority of our guests are shorter. So really, the struggles that tall people go through, I mean, I love to talk about that. But at what point in your journey did you decide that, hey, bodybuilding, that seems something like I could do? How long did it take before you finally started thinking about doing a show?
Um, Thinking about competing myself took about a year. I'd always kind of paid attention to the muscle mags, if you will. Flex was a big one. My husband, who was my boyfriend during college, he got all of those, and I would thumb through them after he was done with them. Muscle and Fitness Hers had just come out, which makes me sound ancient, but it was pretty new about the time we graduated from college. And so, I'd always kind of seen it and admired those women, especially the figure competitors. Bikini actually was not a category the very first year that I started competing. I started thinking about it. It was about 2008, because spring of 2009 is when I did my first show. And started sort of that after about a year. Like I said, we spent about 6 months with Sherry going through what I would consider the rehab phase of training and making sure that my body was working in a way that I wanted and really just making some weight loss goals. We came to realize that once we met that goal, I was one of these people that I needed something else. I'm very deadline oriented, and deadlines have consequences for me, not just for, if people are working with me and we don't meet deadlines. I take that kind of personally sometimes, which is both a good and a bad thing. um, but for myself too, because I hold myself very accountable to those deadlines, and those goals. And if for some reason they are not met, I'm like personally offended by my own self, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Um, like, how dare me let
Yep.
me down? So we started kind of looking at competing as something to really push me to try something a little bit that I'm uncomfortable with. I had always been a competitive athlete, but most of the sports that I had always been involved in, especially volleyball, that's a team sport. And it's a fully clothed sport.
Yep.
And so competing is one of those that literally puts you out there. And it was a very rewarding experience, partially just because I had gone from within about a year and a half being close to 200 pounds, sitting on the couch, not being able to do anything, to really just, and for lack of a better word, grinding until I got where I wanted to be, at least for that moment.
Yeah.
And so we did my first show in this tiny little university up in Edmond, Oklahoma. It was not a national qualifier. I think there were about 4 people in my class. And like I said, bikini did not even exist yet. I believe it was the very next year that bikini came out, but never in my life have I ever even fathomed that I would be a bikini competitor.
Yep.
Even as a string bean on my first show, I had my clavicles are basically just way too wide. I look like a linebacker. So, yeah. And so from there, we just kind of kept hammering at it and seeing what we could do. And I was having fun with it. And yes, I won my first show, but the next few after that were larger shows. Once I dipped my toe in, I decided to try some of the national qualifiers and stuff. And I wouldn't say I got my butt handed to me, but I definitely did not win. And I had some improvements to do, but it was one of those that I was really interested in pursuing it. It was something that sparked a passion and really kept me going for my own personal motivation, as well as working with my own clients at that time.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, just hearing about other people's journeys and what they go through to compete, I mean, I absolutely love. But I always love to ask because everyone always seems to have that one body part that really is just naturally built where they don't have to train it as much when they get into the gym, especially when they start competing. And they always have that one body part that just really needs to catch up on everything else that they need to sort of train to overdrive. What are those for you?
Initially, which sounds kind of funny because I feel like I'm known for this now, my shoulders.
Yep.
I would say if you look at some of my pictures now, and these are, I get comments from a lot of people. I'm more known for the width and the roundness of the shoulders that I carry. as well as the width of my upper back.
Mhm.
But honestly, initially, that was my big struggle.
Mhm.
I had always had pretty well developed legs, mostly from volleyball.
Mhm.
We're jumping all over the place, strangely enough, not the big volleyball booty.
Yep.
That's a misnomer. If you look at most of these volleyball girls, they actually don't have big old booties. We
Yep.
got giant quads.
Mhm.
Quads are going to be our pushing force for a lot of that diving and jumping. So my legs had always been fairly well developed, but my top half, which is not uncommon for a lot of women, our upper bodies, we tend to need to build up to create that
Mhm.
balance. And initially, that was my big struggle. I was training shoulders, like specifically training shoulders, not just upper body, probably three specific times, and then usually I do like one full body workout a week, so kind of hitting it a
Yeah.
fourth time. Um, 3 times a week there for at least 2 to 3 years, and now I've gotten to where I'm only doing it twice,
Mhm.
only twice.
Yeah.
um, but I do still to this day. I hit my upper body twice a week. I have a chest and shoulder day twice a week, and then a back and rear delt day twice a week.
Mhm.
And so that's something I had to work really hard to build up.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I have sort of the similar thing where I was exactly the opposite. Where I mean, my back is the one thing that looks like I could compete in a bodybuilding show. Where it's just I could train it once every 6 months and it would still look, really, really good. I don't
Well,
know
you
where I
are
get
very
that from.
lucky.
I know, I'm very lucky in that way. But I mean, it's like it's just one of those free things. But for me, like I said before, I mean, my legs. I mean, being 6'3" and having that pitcher's body where you're supposed to be long and lean. I mean,
Yeah.
even upper body wise, that was hard for me to put on muscle. But the legs is a tough. I hate it so much, so that's why I train it twice a week. But it's my least favorite day of the week. I mean, but it's one of those things where you have to do it because I don't want to be one of those guys that has legs about the size of other people's arms and then just be like walking around. Yep,
The
exactly.
Johnny Bravo body.
The Johnny Bravo body. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so yeah, I live in fear of that. So yeah, I always got to sort of train my legs and make sure that they catch
Yeah.
up to everything else. But you kind of touched on this just a tad bit before. Like you said,
Sure.
when you're going out in volleyball, you're fully covered, but you're in front of a lot of people. Was that a hard thing for you mentally and also just physically wise to realize when you're going out and competing in a show? I always say if you were to poll the general public, there's going to be a small singular percentage of people that are willing to go out there and pose basically in a
Oh
bikini
yeah.
in front of people. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of passion. Was that something that you were really nervous about and that you really had to overcome? Or was it like some of the people that we have on the show who just say, like it got to a point where I just worked my butt off and I just want to show it off?
I think I've been in both places.
Mhm.
The first couple of shows I did, I was pretty nervous, mostly because I wasn't sure how it was going to go.
Mhm.
I as a student athlete, I was always pretty confident of my skills, but bodybuilding is very different from competitive athletics. I can go out there with the best overhand serve, these crazy jump shots,
Mhm.
and just be like, look, I've got these stats. This is what I would look like in a combine. I know how I would stack up against the competition. Bodybuilding, however, one, especially at the amateur level.
Mhm.
Now, at the pro level, it's a little different. We can talk about that more
Yeah.
different later. But at the amateur level, especially, you legitimately have no idea who's going to show up. And to an extent, you don't 100% know which way the judging is going to go. I mean, we have standards and stuff like that, but you also never are 100% sure, which in competitive athletics, you're not 100% sure either, but you're also not 100% sure of how your body's going to look that day.
Mhm.
And this is where you start getting into like the nitty gritties of, we can talk about nutrition with prep
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But how well you slept, what sort of carbs you ate, how much water you took in,
Yes.
all of that starts to play. And honestly, I wasn't that aware of it at the beginning. Like that's something Sherry, I was just like, she just
Yeah.
told me what to eat, and I was like, okay, I'm eating it. What am I
Yeah.
doing? Now I get it. So I think that was a big fear of mine when I was going into it. Is just that fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, we practiced a lot. Sherry was my first posing coach as well. And now she and I work together to teach
Mhm.
posing classes. And so I practiced a ton. And when I was practicing posing, I wouldn't be practicing posing in, a t-shirt
Mhm.
and pants. I would be
Yeah.
in a bikini,
Mhm.
not necessarily my posing suit, but as close to my posing suit as possible.
Mhm.
And in a group class. So I got a little bit comfortable being
Mhm.
around other people in that phase through practice, which I advise most of my posing clients to do is,
Mhm.
not just do the private classes, because those are helpful too, but also get in with the group classes and get used to being in front of other people. Because when you get on the stage with all those lights and everybody looking at you, that should not be the first time that you've been in front of other people,
Mhm.
basically naked.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but now, yeah, it's gotten to a point now where I'm pretty,
Mhm.
sure of myself and confident. I will say the one time that I got extremely nervous, since having gotten my pro card, I always have a little bit of healthy
Mhm.
anxiety, is, nervous enough to take it seriously,
Mhm.
but not so nervous that I'm like shaking all over the
Yep.
place. Um, I remember getting a little nervous at nationals in Miami when I got my pro card,
Mhm.
mostly because when I went, I was just excited to go.
Mhm.
I had qualified before, but then I found out I was pregnant, so obviously put off
Oh, yep.
um, going to nationals, and
Mhm.
then had to requalify a few years
Mhm.
later. And so at that time, I was just pretty excited to go
Mhm.
and just to be a part of the experience. I was not, I knew I looked really good, but I wasn't necessarily going in going, I'm going to get my pro card like some people are. I was just
Yeah.
really thrilled to be there. And then, we start moving people around on the stage and realizing, oh crap, like, did I just did that. And so I got a little, I remember being a little nervous and
Mhm.
shaky like in that moment,
Yeah.
mostly from excitement
Mhm.
probably. Similar to, I feel like when I won the Europa, I was pretty, similar feeling, getting moved to the middle. And that was the first time that, I'd gotten top placings before, but that was the first time I legitimately won a show. And that made me a little nervous just because, I don't know, being that center mark all of a sudden was like, oh, really?
Mhm.
Me?
Yeah.
And then similar feeling when I did the Olympia,
Mhm.
because we come out on stage differently.
Yep.
I say, and so, and I can't remember. Obviously, I watched it this last year, but I can't remember. I'm pretty sure they came in from the backstage again. That
Mhm.
tends to be where they do it, where they just open the curtain and then there you are.
Yep.
Whereas most other pro shows, just like the amateur shows, you actually come in from side stage.
Mhm.
And so it was just so different. Again, that rehearsal thing. I had not rehearsed it
Mhm.
coming in from like da 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 da.
Yep.
Here you are behind the curtain. And so yeah, I got a little nervous for that. And it's the bodybuilding of Super
Yeah.
Bowl of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, I was very nervous, but mostly just from excitement.
Yeah, I mean that's just like you said, the bodybuilding Super Bowl. So yeah, just that experience alone is incredible. But I mean, you're a posing coach, so I mean, we love having posing coaches on. You're probably our third one that we've had on, because probably the biggest surprise for me when I started this podcast, I didn't know, is that for a lot of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing during their prep. It's harder than their
Yes.
nutrition. It's harder than their working out, which you would never guess for a lot of people. But I've come to learn that it's very difficult, and I always sort of like to make the comparison now of, you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser.
Oh
It,
no.
it's ever evolving. I mean, you always have to practice it. On your level, how hard was that to sort of adapt the posing and learn the posing, and how has that sort of changed over time? And for people that you do a posing coach for, what would you say is the biggest struggle for the average person that comes in wanting to compete? What's the hardest thing with their posing?
Um, well, I'll address your second question
Hmm.
first, actually. I think the hardest thing and the most challenging thing that I see with a lot of posing clients that I work with is honestly that they wait too long to come to me,
Hmm.
or to anyone, not just me. You work so hard dieting and working out in the gym. You're in the gym 2 or 3 hours a day doing your cardio. And then you wait until 2 to 3 weeks before your show to try and learn to pose.
Yeah.
And it's just that same thing. You can be a great driver, but you're not going to beat Danica Patrick
Hmm.
without practicing. She may have the same skills as you, but she's been
Yep.
rehearsing that moment
Hmm.
over and over and over again. And so practicing well in advance of your show over and over, and not just during class, but throughout the week when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're angry. In every setting is very important. And that's one of the biggest things that I have to work and struggle with, is to convince people that waiting is not in their best interest. Because I have seen many, many incredible physiques get beat by posing
Hmm.
because you don't know how to show it off.
Yep.
And everybody's got different little quirks, parts of their body that are locked up that we need to work with. Um, and that is just so important, is just impressing the amount that you need to practice, and soon, not sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be the biggest thing that I deal with as a posing coach, and working with some of the men and women that I help through that phase of competing.
Mm-hmm.
But your first question about transitioning basically from the amateur level to the pro level, I think the biggest challenge for me is, or was, and I still have this challenge, I tend to move too quickly. Um, at the amateur level, especially when you get to the national level, they move you fast, and you have to hit those poses. You get like 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. You're going through those poses, and those judges are very well rehearsed. They know how to, they're, as soon as you walk out, they're, so your speed doesn't really matter. Whereas at the pro level, they give you all the time you want, and we get to prance around stage, and you get like, when I'm trying to remember, like when I did local shows and nationals, I hit like, you hit your front pose, you hit your back pose, and then you have some cute little side pose, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you better get the heck out of the way.
Yep.
Whereas, at the pro level, we're all like, especially figure and bikini athletes, we're dancing basically. It's a routine. And there is such a thing as too long, but I had to slow down and really kind of not just hit my poses, but actually make an art out of it. And at this point, I kind of have like a base routine with, there's about 5 poses that I hit in it, and it's a choreographed dance at this point. And I've got that part memorized, and it's always a little bit different just based on, sometimes I'll forget a step, or I'll add one in, or, the house music may have a different rhythm. So I got to, I'm at least trying to be somewhat on rhythm with that, and not looking like a giant goober. And so that, I think, was the biggest thing for me moving from the amateur level to the pro level, was really working with adding that grace in, which you need grace at the amateur level, but you have time to legitimately show off and do something like that at the pro level.
Well, and obviously being taller too, it's a lot harder to show off that grace than it is for maybe, say, some of these shorter competitors. I mean, that's a thing that, I mean, I could even tell. I mean, I'm flexible for a tall guy, but yeah, I could never imagine having the grace that some of these people have when they go on stage. My body is just definitely not built that way. But when you're doing your posing coaching, what would you say for the average competitor that comes to you that's a figure competitor? What would you say is the easiest pose to teach them and the hardest pose to teach them?
Oh my goodness. I think the easiest pose, so figure, we usually deal with quarter turns, and then you have your individual presentation when you first walk out, which everybody has a slightly different term for it, but I'll use the term individual presentation. So you first walk out on stage, the judges have a chance to see you one-on-one. You have your front pose, your back pose, and your little side pose, like I talked about. And there's variations on that a lot of people do, and it just depends on, honestly, your structure. We, as I'm working with people, we try and pick what is going to best show you off. And then in the lineup, you have your quarter turns. So we're pretty straightforward with that. We're not hitting a lot of, like front double biceps or, rear lat spreads, although some of us are now, especially in our individual presentations. So I think the easiest pose to teach is actually going to be one of the side poses on a quarter turn. And I say easiest just because none of them are really easy, honestly. It's surprisingly difficult to stand sideways and twist through your thoracic spine to be able to show off the upper body, but keep the lower body pointing in one direction. So if I have to choose what is the easiest, that would be the most simple and direct for most people, except for the abdominal control for most women, especially if we've had children. That is something that we have to train and practice. I still have to train and practice that. I will look 3 months pregnant if I'm standing by myself, just hanging out with my guts. But the most difficult pose, and it just kind of depends on which direction you're facing, but is going to be that lat spread for figure. It is actually easier to spread your lat in a rear double bicep or a rear lat spread with your hands being able to tuck and pull like a bodybuilder, or go up and bring it
Mhm.
forward than it is to just pull the lats out and have your arms not look like Big Bird.
Yep.
And I use the term Big Bird lovingly because that's what I looked like for a long time. I looked like a very
Mhm.
skinny scarecrow with my arms out as far as possible, thinking that was what did
Mhm.
that. And so that's a hard one to teach because a lot of people do not have the ability to legitimately feel their back.
Mhm.
It's easier to feel something that you can see. And so a lot of bodybuilders and just general, fitness people, if you will, people that are involved in
Yep.
fitness, they have an easier time with that mind muscle connection with the biceps, the shoulders, the
Mhm.
chest, even their abs, legs, because we can see them, but you cannot see all 77 muscles on your back. And so if you can't see it, which is why most gyms have mirrors, it's hard to know what exactly is going on
Yep.
back there. And so the room that I use with the posing classes that I teach with Sherry, we have mirrors on both sides,
Mhm.
thankfully. And so a lot of times we have the benefit of if I'm trying to teach someone that lat spread, they can kind of see what I'm doing in the reflection behind them.
Mhm.
And I film a lot. I'll take their phones and film it so they can see what they're doing. But that is a big challenge for a
Mhm.
lot of figure competitors, especially because we got to keep those legs stuck together. Your hips have to be out, you're arched up. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it is so difficult that I didn't even know about with the posing. We've learned so many things just from people coming on and talking about it that, yeah, I mean, it really just gains even more of amount of respect for what these people have to go through because, I mean, like you said, when you're competing, you are so dieted down to, and just being able to hit those poses, I mean, you basically just have to have it memorized to the point of where you can do it in your sleep. But
Yep.
it's definitely a skill that a lot of people don't know about. But now we go to one of the fun questions. What is your go-to post-show meal?
I am a huge fan of cheeseburgers in all varieties. I'm not a greasy food person too much, and I've learned my lesson the hard way. um, not to go bananas with too many sweets. At
Mhm.
least for me, my guts reject that big time
Mhm.
after I've dieted down. I mean, first show and everybody's got to learn the hard way. This is another thing I try to impress upon a lot of the competitors that I come across is, go get what you want, but the food will always be there.
Mhm.
Target is not going to stop selling Oreos.
Yep.
Domino's is not going to stop delivering pizza. You do not have to eat it all tonight.
Mhm.
um, and so, I've done that. I've done the binge all night long. And I've not had this in
Mhm.
6 months. I got to eat all of it. And then you just end up being sick and
Yep.
hating yourself and gaining 30 pounds in 48 hours and wondering what happened. Um, and so I've gotten to the point where I have pretty much, I'll go have a really good, giant
Mhm.
cheeseburger. I will eat the whole thing. I can eat. um, Tortilla chips and salsa. I
Mhm.
am a very big texture eater, and tortilla chips just hit that crunch
Mhm.
just right. And Diet Dr. Pepper.
Oof. Yeah. That is
That's my go-to.
that
I mean, and sometimes I'll have a cookie or 2,
yeah.
but honestly, I'm not too big of a sweet tooth,
Yeah.
so
That is a good one. But now you sort of brought us up to our next question that I love to ask, and it's probably the most important one because I'll give an example. So I was at a New Year's Eve party, and a friend of mine came up to me and said, "Hey Ryan, I really enjoy watching your podcast, but one of the things that really surprised me because he lifts weights too, but he
mhm.
didn't know. He said." I always thought that a lot of these competitors, I mean, were able to look like that almost year round. I didn't
Oh,
know
no.
I didn't know that when they go up on stage, I mean, that's a look that, they can only have basically for that day. And then they're going to put on weight because I always like to say you kind of manipulate your body through all the working out and through all of the
Right.
nutrition into a look that is not sustainable. So there's so many people that don't know that because they look at the stage photos or they look at some of the Instagram photos and they see like, oh wow, this person must look like that year round. Or that sometimes and you don't run into that many bodybuilders in public. So if you were to run into them, some at the time you might not think that they do bodybuilding because you're just like, oh, they're just a person that works out a lot and has a lot of muscle, but not like competes. But it's one of those things that I love to bring up because there's so many times we've had so many competitors come on here and say that like they didn't know that ahead of time. So when they first did their show and then when they started to put on weight, they didn't know what was going on. They thought it was something wrong with them because they didn't realize, well, a lot of them didn't have trainers too. So that's why another reason to get a trainer or a coach when you're doing a
Yes.
show.
I was actually
But
gonna allude to
yeah, well,
that.
absolutely. But being, a trainer too, but from a personal perspective, was that ever difficult for you sort of realizing that, I put in all this hard work on my
Oh,
body
yeah.
and I'm going to have to put on weight regardless? And, a lot of people just get down and out about it, but how have you dealt with that over time?
At first, so there's two sides to that. One, I had and still do have, Sherry and I still have a very good working relationship. We're still great friends. She is no longer my coach. We train together every once in a while. She was my coach all the way up until actually when I went to nationals. I changed to actually work with her coach, and he is still Jeremy Minahan is still my own coach. And I have had the good blessing, which a lot of people have to learn the hard way, like you said. I have had the good blessing of always having good people in my corner. And not just good people that are knowledgeable, but good people that are legitimately compassionate about their competitors as human beings, not just as a trophy winner.
Yep.
And so it was, Sherry took the time to make sure that I was aware of basically what was going to happen to my body after a show. And this is something that I learned from her, and I now am able to do that for my own clients and our own posing clients, is making sure that they know, especially the women, but the men will go through this too, but women's bodies rebound a little bit faster usually. Again, that hormone balance. So making sure that they're aware that a normal amount of weight gain is to be expected. You start putting back in salty and sugary foods within a healthy reason, those abs might not be there in a couple of days. Because some of that, me especially, I'm one of those, I have a very small waist. My abdominal wall is long and drawn out because my waistline is very long. I will never have what I call ravioli abs.
Yep.
Like some of these shorter CrossFit competitors that you see,
Yep.
they have these chunky, great abs. I'm never going to have those. I can have a well-defined defined abdominal wall, and a lot of the female competitors that I encounter have that as well. But it's really just that one day because we've stopped eating sodium or whatever water manipulations that we've been doing to draw out that last little bit. Well, boom! Oh, I have abs today. Tomorrow, not so much because I drank my Diet Dr Pepper and ate my cheeseburger. And so that's something I was made aware of it, but then I also had to experience it myself. And this is something that actually was really hard. And I know a lot of other competitors deal with this, especially if you are someone who had to go through a big weight loss, which, I was about 200 pounds when I first started working out just in a gym, and got down to, I want to say I was like, which sounds terribly thin, but I also did not have as much muscle as I do now. I was about 138 pounds, I think, my first show, which 5'10", you're like, oh, 138, not that big a deal. No, I was a scarecrow. I look at those pictures now and go, gross. And, of course, nobody at the time was like, oh, Sarah, you really need to eat. But, so after those first couple of shows, when I was down that little and realizing in order to keep doing what I really enjoyed and wanted to be successful at, I would have to put some muscle on. Well, that means that I'm going to have to put some weight back on. And so going backwards, what I saw as backwards, gaining weight, getting up to close to, 175 pounds again. Well, that's like, oh no, I just came from here. Don't, and it's a slippery slope for some people too. Thankfully, we talked a little bit earlier about, me being sort of deadline driven, and I would sort of set, benchmarks for myself as far as, okay, so if we're going to spend, 6 months in doing an off season build, then I'm going to, I've already got my next show kind of picked out. And that's not necessarily a sustainable weight loss method. I would not recommend that for anybody. And I did not use that as a sustainable weight loss method, but it did give me some goal dates and stuff like that. Or I would have like photo shoots, and keeping those things in my mind and like what I legitimately wanted at the end of this, keeping those things at the forefront of my mind was very imperative in making sure that I stayed on top of my nutrition, as well as, which we talked a little bit about, the like post-show treat, feeling what my body felt like when I treated it correctly and put good food in versus when I would go and, have the cheat meal that was not necessarily all things that my coach would have recommended, and feeling legitimately sick and not really wanting to deal with that on a regular basis. Kind of kept me in check as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, it's just so important that people do have that support, though, because a lot of people, like I said before, like they get started and then they don't know what to do, and then it leads down a spiral. So I always love bringing that up because a lot of people, that's just one thing that they don't realize is that these bodybuilders, they're not going to look like that year round. You see them on the street,
No.
unless they're getting ready for a prep, you're going to probably say, like I said before, they have a lot of muscle, but they don't look, absolutely shredded or anything like that. But now, at what point in your journey did you decide that you wanted to become a personal trainer yourself?
I actually, um, hmm, honestly, it was shortly after college. So
Mhm.
about the same time that I started working with Sherry, I kind of thought that I might want to do something in that vein.
Mhm.
Initially, I started my life okay. So after college, I got a job as a marketing copywriter. I, have a couple of different degrees as an undergrad, and one of them is English. So I actually started as a marketing copywriter
Mhm.
for the largest newspaper here
Wow.
in Oklahoma, which is now owned by a whole nother company.
Yeah.
But I spent about a year and a half, about a year, a little over a year, working for them and realizing that I did not want to sell my soul. Essentially, it's how, and
Yeah.
mad respect for anybody. And I have quite a few clients that work in marketing. If you're doing it with something that you're legitimately passionate about, it is a great industry.
Mhm.
And I still, do a lot of writing for Project AD. We have blogs that I write, and I still utilize a lot of marketing copywriting, but it's for something that I'm legitimately
Yep.
passionate about now. And so I actually left that job and got my teaching certificate, and I taught high school English.
Ah.
For yeah, I was a high school English teacher. I was Yeah, it was fun. I did that for I was in the classroom for close to 3 years, and then I spent my last year with Oklahoma City Public Schools actually as a curriculum developer,
Mhm.
but for English is what I taught. But the whole time that I was in the classroom teaching, I was actually going to graduate school at night at the University of Central Oklahoma, with the intention of doing something not in the classroom. I was wanting to take everything that I was doing in the classroom and apply it to changing people's lives through fitness and nutrition, because I had experienced that myself, and a lot of trainers and nutritionists, that is legitimately how we come to it. We see the power, and we want to be able to take that gift that we've been given and give it to other people. And it's amazing how much that small area of empowerment, of being able to take control of, in my case, it was legitimately trying to control my own body and be able to do what I wanted to do. But for a lot of men and women, it's being able to see firsthand that you are able to change your own health and your own fitness through your own hard work, and really seeing the benefit of that. And that translates to so many other aspects of your life that it is, oh my goodness, I can't even describe it. It's the most amazing gift to be able to stand next to somebody and watch them be amazing, basically. And so I get to spend my life doing that
That
now.
that is
Yeah.
so awesome. Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people just to find that thing in their life, and I always recommend that just try many things to just end up finding that thing. And I mean, it's so great that you ended up finding your thing that you love to do. Because, like I said, if you find the thing that you love to do, it doesn't become a job. It just becomes something that you love to do, which is
Yeah.
something that everyone needs. But now, I mean, one of the biggest stereotypes that I love to bust on this show. I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years because of Instagram, but there's still a lot of women that have that fear where if they touch one weight they're just going to hulk out and put on 50 pounds of
Oh,
muscle overnight. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I would be a very, very rich man. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started out? And even if you didn't, I mean, being a personal trainer, you probably hear that all the time. What do you mainly
yes.
say to your clients when they say that?
And that's, as I say, it's actually more the latter. I would
Yeah.
say, as someone who, I had experience in the athletic world, kind of pushing my own body, and obviously, like, seeing myself not being a giant,
Yeah.
muscle bound human being, which we didn't do a ridiculous amount of weightlifting, which they do more now, which is awesome. But as a female athlete, we did not spend as much time in the weight room as the our male counterpoint parts did, especially through high school. But none of us were hulked out, and so I had already seen that, exposure to things. We had good, well defined bodies from the activities we were doing, but most of us were still very normal sized girls. Um, and so the latter side of that you alluded to, this is actually a conversation that I end up having with a lot of my clients. I do have some that, they come to me and I want to put on some muscle and and I'm like, all right, let's do
Yeah.
this. And that's an easy conversation to have. Like, okay, we're going to work really hard and get going with this. Usually it's more women who either have never been in a gym or women who are coming from a large weight loss and needing to rebuild their confidence as well as their own bodies. And men too. I do have male
Yep.
clients, but this is a conversation that we deal with more with women. Is the concern that if I hand you the 25-pound weight, suddenly your biceps are going to be bigger than your boyfriend's or your
Yep.
husband's, and really just a lot of Instagram and Facebook actually has been a tool in that conversation, because thankfully a lot of women are now starting to post those transformations, that lovely Transformation Tuesday thing.
Yep.
And I can use a lot of my own pictures. I've been, in the gym and competing close to 10 years now. And that's about how long it's taken to get where I am. And I can sit here and talk with these women. I was like, I ate and lifted in an extremely strategic way. I eat when I'm trying to build, I will eat almost as much as my 6'4", 285-pound husband, in order to put on that muscle and lift in a manner that causes that. But you eating a normal diet that I have designed for you to get to the goals that you're wanting, and lifting, yes, heavy enough to where it's a difficult workout, but not so much that you're suddenly going to be a power lifter,
Yep.
which I've had some powerlifting clients, and that's a different goal.
Yep.
There's literally no way unless you eat and build your workout routines in that structure. Our hormone balance, our progesterone and estrogen levels especially, do not allow us, unless there are some women that are genetically inclined to put
Yep.
on muscle more than others, but it generally does not allow us to build that size without intention. And so, it's funny that you talk about lifting heavy as to build weight. Honestly, the majority of my clients know that if I grab the tiny weights, the little 3-pounders, that's going to be the sucky part of our workout.
Yep.
They'd rather move big heavy weights at this point than, here, you're about to do some rear delt abductions that are going to up your life.
Yeah. I always love to tell the story of when I was in college, getting bigger and stronger. One of my really good friends, she came up to me and she said, Ryan, I noticed that you're working out a lot and I want to go to the gym with you, but I'm just afraid that I'm going to get super big and bulky. And then finally one night I just told her, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs, when we go out to dinner, weighs more than a lot of the dumbbells in the gym. And you're not getting any muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7. So it was one of those things where, yeah, just go and try it, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthier. That's what I always say. But it's
Absolutely.
it's
And your
definitely.
bones are going to be so much stronger.
Yep,
I mean, that's the
100%.
biggest benefit for a lot of women, is getting those osteoblasts going in the bones and making sure that you can actually hang out with your grandkids later.
Absolutely. 100%. But now these are two of my favorite questions to ask. But for the first one of the things that I found out when I was working out a lot and getting bigger and stronger in college, I should say, the one negative thing is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars.
Yep.
I'm still at home with my parents for the next few months, but whenever they come home with groceries, like my mom did this morning, I got to go out and basically lift the car into the driveway and carry in all the groceries. Do you find that just based on the way that you look, people assume that you can do favors like that for them?
Well, it's kind of funny. I mentioned my husband's size earlier. I
Yeah.
actually make him do a lot of it.
When you said that, I probably
He
said, yeah,
gets
he
that a
probably
lot.
does it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. It's a little bit the other way around, but within outside of the home,
Yeah.
yes, I would say one, I'm much taller than the
Yep.
average female, being a little over 5'10", and then just muscular size. I will get a lot of times like, oh well, she doesn't need help with that, or hey Sarah, come move this for me, which honestly sometimes I cannot move it.
Yep.
Like I'm very, and I joke with, I help out with our religious community sometimes, and usually when I'm helping, I'm moving things. I'm like, the good Lord built me to move things. That's how I can help. So I'll be moving the tables and stuff. But yeah, I do get that a lot, but oftentimes I actually hand it off and I do the same thing to my husband. He's, like I said, he's 6'4" and 285 pounds. And his nickname is Mongo.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I get that all the time also. Like I said, being 6'3", I don't even need to have muscles. I could be wearing a sweater like I'm right now, and people would still
Uh-huh.
assume that I
Oh,
could do
hey,
stuff
big
for
guy,
them.
come help me with this.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely 100%. But now, probably my favorite question to ask, and again, for everyone out there, this is a multi-million-dollar idea. But when it comes to clothes for fit women, I mean, I have a different question for my fit guys. But when it comes to clothes for fit women, your clothing options can be limited. I always love to say, like if you have big shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time that never really tend to work out. But what are some
Right.
ways that you sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited? And the height thing too is also another
Yeah.
detriment. So how do you compensate for all those things?
Thankfully, a lot of clothing makers have started making tall
Mhm.
things. Old Navy, Gap, those are some big ones. Athleta, which they're all owned by the same company. So I order a lot of clothes online. Um, with leggings especially. I pretty much live in leggings, I'll just be really honest. One, it's my professional uniform, and then thankfully the way fashion trends are going now, I can wear leggings with just like oversized shirts and boots and be super cute. So I do live in leggings a lot. Shirt wise, t-shirts are not your friend,
Yep.
women, unless we tie them up real cute.
Mhm.
That's something that we do a lot. um, Racerbacks, and honestly, I wear a lot of layers. So I'll wear tank tops with like a smaller, like crop tank top. It's actually interesting that you asked me this question. My husband owns a small apparel line.
Oh, wow.
We actually print T-shirts in our garage.
Wow.
It's No Easy Days Apparel, and we were actually having this conversation the other day because he's like, "Hey, you don't wear a lot of the T-shirts I make," and I was like, "Hey, because I don't think they look good on
Yeah.
me. Like, I love the designs, I approve a lot of them, but for women, really, especially an athletic build, a tank top is going to be a lot more flattering. And
Mhm.
then you throw on like a more fitted sweatshirt on top of it if you're cold, or like the zip up jackets. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we're wearing the zip up jackets that are a size too small and just
Mhm.
zipping them up over our stomachs. Um, and that's going to be honestly kind of some of the like hacks, if you will, that we'll use to make things look a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to where I swear, honestly, I swear by Old Navy's tall line,
Mhm.
for price and for the fit. They've gotten so good with it.
Yeah, I mean, I highly recommend everyone just go and check out all that stuff. And what is the name of the clothing line that your husband prints?
My husband runs. It's in my garage, so
Mhm.
I would appreciate it if y'all would buy the stuff.
Yeah.
But it's No Easy Days Apparel, and it's a my husband's a Navy chief, as
Yep.
well as in law enforcement, and so it's got a lot of that sort of theme
Mhm.
through it. There is some women specific stuff, but it's very pro military, pro law enforcement,
Yep.
just motivational stuff. And we've been running that out of our house for about 2 years now.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave a link down below for everyone to go and check it out. And I mean,
Yeah.
I highly recommend you go and buy some apparel. And we just have a few questions here before we wrap things up. But you mentioned it before when you were talking about just the prep that people go through to go to a show. One of the things that no one really ever talks about on Instagram, I don't know if anyone ever even has, is sleep. Sleep can be one of
Oh,
the most important things, if not the most important thing, at least when it comes to recovery. I mean, I had for probably like I think my 40th guest ever on this podcast, I had the number one sleep specialist in the world call from the UK, and I talked to him. And well, first off, he had one of those British accents where you feel like you gain 10 IQ points just from talking to him, just because
yes.
he sounded so smart. So I was like, dude, just keep talking. I'm just gonna let you just talk the entire time. But yeah, it was very, very informative on me. But what is your average night consist of? How much sleep do you try to get? And for your clients too, how much sleep do you try to tell them to get? Especially because when you are training, you are going to need to get probably more sleep than the average person in order for the recovery and in order to be able to,
Right.
have the energy to work out the next day.
Yeah. So one of the big things, and I actually, strangely enough, just posted an article by a teammate of mine in my Instagram story today about this very same
Mhm.
subject, napping. If you have time to do those like 15-minute power naps, especially during peak
Mhm.
competition season, when you're really, like I said, like in the gym like 2 to 3 hours a day, that's going to be hugely powerful. Your body needs that recovery time. There is a form of recovery that you cannot get other than during sleep. Now, those naps are not going to be enough. You need deep REM sleep to actually go into full muscle repair. And for myself, I generally try to get, you know, when I first started, I was shooting more for like 6 hours, but I was also in graduate school at the
Mhm.
time. So I had a lot, and I still have a lot going on, but I've got a lot more control over my schedule now as far as the evening times go. So I'll be honest, I'm in bed by 9 o'clock most evenings. And I generally sleep about 7 hours. I'll sleep a little bit longer on the weekends when I don't have clients or meetings that I need to get to, or, my son doesn't need to go to school. But I'm in bed by 9 most evenings, and then I'm up 4 o'clock at the earliest, 5 o'clock,
Wow.
but I'm still getting a really good night's sleep.
Yeah.
I'm a morning person. Don't like, obviously I'm like
Yeah.
passing out. Like I say 9 o'clock, really, I would be in bed by 8:30 if I could.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm the exact opposite because I work nights. So I work, usually around 4 or 5 to midnight or 1, and then I'll come home and I'll work on editing a podcast for like an hour or two. So I'm usually going to bed by around 4. So just a little thing. She's getting up usually around the time that I'm going to sleep at
Yeah.
night. So it's completely different. But yeah, it is so important. It's one of the things that I try to tell everyone. It's like you need to get that amount of sleep, because if you don't, I mean, your recovery is not going to be as good. And it's so important, and it's not talked about so much. So anytime I have the chance, I love to bring it up. But now you're also a mom, and I always love to have, especially when we have moms come on the show, just ask, how are you able to juggle that? Because I always like to say, being a mom is a full-time job in and of itself, and also being a personal trainer and competing. How are you able to do that? Does it just take a very good time management system?
That's going to be the biggest part. Is just really, and I have a little planner. I use my calendar. I am very strategic with how I use my time. Depending on the day, I don't do this with every day, but there are some days where I am scheduling myself down to the minute,
Mhm.
just to make sure that I'm getting everything done. So, like right now, I have this blocked out
Yep.
in my calendar. I am scheduling myself down to the minute, but I also, because I am in business for myself, it's a blessing. So
Mhm.
I have some control over that time
Mhm.
as well. I take my son to school every day. We leave this house by 7:45, so I'm up at that 4 or 5 o'clock at the latest. I have thankfully gotten in a situation where I have, my own treadmill, I have an arc trainer, and I have designed that at my house so that I am able to not have to go to the gym. So
Mhm.
I don't have to spend that 30 minutes going there and then coming back. And now that my son is 6 now, I still wouldn't leave him at home by himself.
Mhm.
But when he was teeny weeny, my husband was working, the graveyard shift with the police department.
Mhm.
And there was no way that I was leaving this house to be able to go get cardio done in the morning, especially when I was working on competing. You need to get that fasted cardio in. So I made the investment to put those pieces in my house so
Mhm.
that I could get that done and not have to waste time.
Mhm.
Legitimately, to me, that was wasting time. And so I made the financial investment to save myself that time. And then, I've structured my day to where and not everybody has this blessing. And when I was teaching, I had to, do my training after
Mhm.
school. And so I was a little bit more like 9 to 5. People have to come in and work out after work, and then they have to go home and eat dinner and get the kids ready. And so I totally get that. Thankfully, I am in a situation where I don't have to do that for myself anymore. I still have to juggle it and make sure that I've got time to run my business, get my own workout in, get my cardio done, eat really quick, head home so I can get on a
Yep.
podcast with you really quick. My husband went and picked up my
Uh,
son this afternoon so that we can finish our
yeah.
conversation. And then I have to get back to the gym.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
I still do have, so it's really, honestly, it's very intentional. And I use that word with purpose. It
Mhm.
is extremely intentional time management and using my resources in a very strategic manner.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, we cannot thank her enough for taking some time out of her day to come and talk to us. We really, really appreciate it. Now, I just have these 2 super quick questions to ask
Sure.
before we wrap things up. So, what is your next competition? Do you have a date in mind, or do you have a plan of when you're going to compete next?
I do. I've taken about the last year off. Towards the end of 2000, we just finished 2018. Towards the end of 2017, I was starting to have issues with my neck again, just pain and weird nerve sensations. Basically, I had been pushing a little hard,
Mm-hmm.
and so my body told me I needed a break. So I spent most of last year, just working out and, staying on top of my own personal health and fitness as far as not letting myself go,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, but really focusing on my business, spending more time at home. I've got a couple side projects that I'm working on now. So that year off has been extremely productive, but I was not competing at all. I spent quite a bit of time working with my chiropractor to make sure that my neck was in the structure that I needed. Because come to find out, after I was starting to deal with some things, my head had basically shifted in the wrong direction. Head was literally not where it needed to be. So I needed to take some time to deal with that. And now everything's feeling good and, ready to hit the ground running again. I actually have a show that I've planned on doing in Fargo, North Dakota in about
Oh,
10
yeah.
weeks. It is the Candace Carter
Yep.
pro show. I have never been to Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, good luck there. It's going to be probably like
Yeah.
negative 30 degrees up there. Jeez.
Yeah, I would say I'm looking at the weather at the end of March going, oh my, I might need my big coat. And this will be one of the first ones. Usually I have some travel buddies, but it's been a little over a year. My husband either comes with me or my coach. I think this one I'm going to go to by myself, just because of the time. And, I don't want to buy everybody's plane tickets.
Yep. Yep.
So
and you don't want to torture them going all the way up to Fargo too. That's just pure torture.
Right?
Yeah.
All I know about Fargo is from the movie, so I'm gonna avoid wood chippers.
Yep. I know everyone always thinks that the Fargo accent is Minnesota, but they don't realize Fargo's in North Dakota. Now, granted, it's literally right across the border from Minnesota, and they're connected, but still, yeah, absolutely. But
I did have to look it up on the map actually.
Yeah.
I know it's in North Dakota, but where in North Dakota?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's about.
So that will be an adventure, and then I am, depending on how April shapes up. Hopefully, I've done the St. Louis Pro before, and that's always been a really good show for me. So I'm hoping to do that one again. I'm not 100% committed to that just yet, but that's mid-April. But I'm doing the Candace Carter show in it's March 23rd, I believe is the date on that one.
All right.
So we're about 10 weeks from that. So I've been already prepping for the last few weeks. I usually do about 14 weeks.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's awesome. So again, if you guys are in the area in North Dakota, go and check out that show. I highly recommend it. And now lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Oh, I mean, I have sponsors that probably would like it if I said
absolutely. Go ahead.
Them. So my husband's apparel company is one of my sponsors because it's in my garage.
You would hope so.
And so No Easy Days Apparel is a big one. And then my big supplement sponsor, which I've been with them for almost 3 years now. I was one of the first U.S. athletes with Project AD. And I cannot thank Joe Benley and Frank for their support enough, especially this last year as I haven't been competing. They've still, made sure that I'm a very active member and supported member of the athlete community, which is hugely appreciated. So looking forward to continuing a good relationship with them. And then I have a suit sponsor, which I cannot say enough about having a suit sponsor. Like supplement sponsors are awesome. Suit sponsorships, girls, if you can get you one of those, that is huge. I have an incredible suit sponsor. She's small potatoes, but she is insanely good. Her name is Jody Sturgeon. She actually is another military wife. She used to live in the Texas area, so she used to live a lot closer to where I'm at. She actually lives in Germany now and still runs her business from the Air Force Base in Germany, where her husband is stationed right now. And so we deal with a lot of time differences and mailing issues, and she is still top notch running her business as best as possible. And the quality is far and above anything. She has actually, I'm a taller competitor and I've always had a hard time with suits. And she took the time to make a pattern that is literally just for me. Wow. So there's actually like a Sarah cut that she sells now with like larger, it's basically looks like a larger suit bottom, but it's not super large, but I'm a bigger person. And so she, made sure everything was exactly how it needed to be. And that is so valuable. So those are some of the people that I work with. And then of course I have my coach, Jeremy Minahan. He and I and a guy named Michael Neely are actually working on a personal training certification that will hopefully, not hopefully, it is going to launch in a couple of months. So you can look for our website's going to be launching. It's International Academy of Fitness Professionals. It's not live yet, but it will be. And we're going to be launching our first certification that we're launching is actually going to be on some of the things that I talked about, that whole behavior change concept and the larger aspect of fitness and nutrition. So a lot of certifications that you see for fitness professionals really just deal with the nitty gritty, like biomechanics and nutrition science and stuff. So this is actually taking behavior change psychology, getting some education on even some life coaching concepts and really applying them specifically to the fitness and nutrition industry and making that bigger impact. So I'm really excited about that.
That is awesome. So again, you guys, go and give Sarah a follow down below. I highly, highly recommend it. You will be inspired to get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies and go and adapt a healthy and fit lifestyle. And again, Sarah, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. We know your time is very, very valuable. So again, you guys, Sarah Sweeney, go and give her a follow. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.